If you have ever sat down at a traditional Chinese dinner table, the sheer scale of the food can feel overwhelming. The table is crowded with dishes, steaming bowls of white rice, plates piled high with stir-fried greens, dumplings, braised tofu, whole steamed fish, and bowls of rich broth. There is no portion control, no calorie counting, and no restriction on carbohydrates. People eat heartily, often refilling their rice bowls multiple times throughout the evening. Yet, if you step onto the streets of Shanghai, Taipei, or Chengdu, you will notice a striking contrast. Obesity is relatively rare, and people appear remarkably lean and healthy. For decades, this has puzzled Western observers. In a culture where food is the ultimate expression of love and hospitality, and where the word for "how are you" translates to "have you eaten yet?" How is it possible that people eat so much, yet stay so thin? The common explanation is genetics. We tell ourselves that East Asians simply have a faster metabolism or a biological resistance to weight gain, but medical history shows this is a myth. When people from China move to Western countries and adopt a Western diet, their rates of obesity, heart disease, and diabetes skyrocket to match or even exceed those of their new neighbors. The secret is not written in their DNA. It is written in their kitchens, their cooking methods, and the structural design of their meals. To understand how this works, we have to look at the landmark China-Cornell-Oxford project, often called the China Study. Directed by Dr. T. Colin Campbell in the late 20th century, this massive epidemiological study compared the diets and health outcomes of rural Chinese populations with those of Western societies. The researchers discovered something extraordinary. The average rural Chinese citizen consumed about 20% more calories per pound of body weight than the average American. Yet, they were 20 to 25% thinner. How can someone consume more calories and remain significantly leaner? The answer lies in a concept that modern nutritional science calls caloric density. Think of your stomach like a fuel tank. If you fill it with a fuel that is incredibly concentrated, you get a massive amount of energy in a very small volume. If you fill it with a fuel that is diluted, you get a large volume but very little energy. A typical Western diet is dominated by dry, calorically dense foods. Cheese, bread, processed meats, and deep-fried snacks contain very little water but a massive number of calories. A single double cheeseburger and a side of fries can easily pack 1,200 calories, yet it fits comfortably in the palm of your hand. It occupies very little physical space in your stomach, meaning you can consume it in minutes and still feel hungry shortly after. In contrast, traditional Chinese cuisine is built on foods that are physically bulky but calorically dilute. The secret ingredient that makes this possible is water. In traditional Chinese cooking, almost everything is cooked using wet methods. Steaming, boiling, stewing, and quick stir-frying are the dominant techniques. Baking, which dries out food and concentrates calories, is virtually non-existent in traditional Chinese home kitchens. Take white rice, the ultimate staple of the Chinese diet. In the West, white rice is often demonized as a fattening carbohydrate. But when you boil rice, it absorbs its own weight in water. A bowl of cooked rice is mostly water, meaning it fills your stomach physically while delivering a relatively low number of calories. The same principle applies to vegetables, which make up the vast majority of a traditional Chinese meal. Chinese greens like bok choy, gailan, and napa cabbage are stir-fried quickly over high heat. This method cooks the vegetables while preserving their water content and dietary fiber. The volume of food you consume is massive, but because it is packed with water and fiber, it stretches the stomach walls, triggering the stretch receptors that signal to your brain that you are full. You are, quite literally, filling your stomach with water and fiber, leaving very little room for excess calories. But it is not just what Chinese people eat. It is how the plate itself is structured. In a Western meal, the structure is usually centered around a single large piece of protein, a thick steak, a chicken breast, or a pork chop, accompanied by a small side of starch and an even smaller serving of vegetables. Meat is the main event. In traditional Chinese cuisine, the ratio is completely inverted. The meal is structured around fan and kai. Fan refers to grains, primarily rice or noodles, which form the neutral base of the meal. Kai refers to everything else, the vegetables, tofu, fish, and meat that accompany the starch. In this system, meat is rarely eaten as a standalone block. Instead, it is treated as a seasoning or flavor enhancer. It is sliced thin, diced into small cubes, or shredded, and then cooked alongside massive quantities of vegetables. A single chicken breast that would serve one person in the West is sliced and stir-fried with mushrooms, garlic, and greens to feed an entire family of 4. This means that while a Chinese diner might eat a large volume of food, their actual intake of animal fat and protein is relatively modest. They are getting the savory flavor and satisfaction of meat without the caloric payload of a heavy, solid steak. Even the way this food is consumed acts as a natural defense against overeating. When you sit down to a meal in the West, you are usually served an individual plate. All the food you are expected to eat is piled in front of you. This creates a psychological pressure to clear your plate, regardless of whether you are actually full. A Chinese meal, however, is communal. Dishes are placed in the center of the table, and everyone shares. You use your chopsticks to take small, individual bites from the center dishes, transferring them to your small rice bowl. This communal structure changes the pace of the meal. You cannot simply scoop up giant forkfuls of food and shovel them into your mouth. Chopsticks impose a physical limit on how much food you can pick up at one time. You are forced to eat slowly, taking small, deliberate bites. This slow pace is critical for weight regulation. It takes roughly 20 minutes for your stomach to communicate with your brain and signal satiety. When you eat a dense, dry Western meal with a fork and spoon, you can easily consume double the calories you actually need before your brain realizes you are full. With chopsticks and communal dining, the eating process is stretched out, allowing your body's natural hunger hormones to catch up with your intake. Furthermore, traditional Chinese culture has a built-in philosophy of moderation known as qi qi fen bao, which translates to eating until you are 70% full. While Western diets often swing between extremes of starvation and indulgence, traditional Chinese dining encourages a steady, moderate intake that never leaves you feeling bloated or heavy. To aid this process, the meal is accompanied by tea. Throughout the day and after meals, Chinese people traditionally drink hot tea, green tea, oolong, or pu'er. They do not drink ice-cold water, sugary sodas, or milkshakes with their food. Drinking warm liquids relaxes the digestive tract and helps break down fats. Green and oolong teas are also rich in catechins, natural antioxidants that have been shown to boost metabolism and improve insulin sensitivity. But there is an even deeper layer to this lifestyle, one that extends beyond the kitchen. For centuries, Chinese society was built around active daily movement. In Chinese cities, walking and cycling have historically been the primary modes of transportation. Even today, with the rise of modern subway systems, the average Chinese citizen walks significantly more than the average Westerner just to commute to work. There is also a deeply ingrained cultural habit of post-meal walking, summarized in the famous Chinese proverb, "Fan hubai buzu, hu dao ju shi ju." I walk 100 steps after a meal, and you will live to 99. After dinner, it is common to see entire neighborhoods of people, from young couples to elderly grandparents, strolling through local parks and streets. This light activity helps lower post-meal blood sugar spikes and aids digestion, preventing the body from storing excess energy as fat. But here is where the story takes a critical turn. If this traditional lifestyle is so effective, why is China currently facing a massive health crisis? Over the past 4 decades, China has undergone the most rapid economic transformation in history. With that wealth came a dramatic shift in how people live and eat. The traditional structure of the Chinese diet is rapidly dissolving, and the consequences are devastating. In the 1980s, less than 1% of the Chinese population had diabetes. Today, that number is over 12%. Obesity rates, which were once among the lowest in the world, have quadrupled. What changed was not the genetics of the Chinese people, but the introduction of a new, modernized food environment. As hundreds of millions of people moved from rural farming villages into high-density cities, their lifestyles became sedentary. Desk jobs replaced manual labor. Cars and scooters replaced bicycles. At the same time, the food supply changed. Western fast food chains like KFC and McDonald's exploded across the country, turning fried chicken and burgers into staple convenience foods for busy urban workers. Even home cooking changed. Cheap, highly refined vegetable oils replaced traditional cooking fats. Processed foods filled with sugar and preservatives flooded the supermarkets. Crucially, the balance of fan and kai was broken. As meat became cheap and abundant, Meals shifted from grain and vegetable-heavy structures to meat-centric feasts. The volume of food remained high, but the caloric density of that food doubled or tripled. The result is that modern China is now battling the exact same chronic health epidemics that have plagued the West for decades. The modern Chinese urbanite is living proof that you cannot eat like a Westerner and maintain the health of a traditional Chinese villager. This shift reveals a profound truth about human health. For years, the Western weight loss industry has promoted the idea that staying thin requires extreme deprivation. We are told to count every calorie, cut out entire food groups, buy expensive diet products, and endure punishing workouts. We treat weight management as a battle of willpower against our own biological urges. But the traditional Chinese diet offers a completely different model. It shows that you do not need to starve yourself to stay thin and healthy. By structuring meals around low-density, high-fiber foods cooked with water, eating slowly with chopsticks, sharing dishes communally, and maintaining a lifestyle of gentle daily movement, traditional Chinese culture created a food system that worked in harmony with human biology. It allowed people to eat large, satisfying portions of food without overloading their bodies with excess energy. It was a system built not on restriction, but on balance. The irony is that as the Western world begins to wake up to the dangers of ultra-processed foods and caloric density, looking for solutions in complex diets and wellness trends, the answers have existed for thousands of years. They were there in the simple combination of steamed rice, stir-fried greens, a warm bowl of soup, and a quiet walk after dinner. The secret to staying thin and healthy was never about eating less. It was about eating in a way that respects the natural limits of our biology. And that is a lesson that both the West and modern China would do well to remember.